Hello and welcome to Books of Blood. My name is John, and as you can probably see, my camera angle is just a little bit different, and the reason for that is I've got my computer right here, and this video is going to be called, or if you notice from the thumbnail, it is called 10 Horror Novels in 5 Subgenres that I Want to Buy and Read. I thought that's the best title I could think of. I was going to go with 5 or 10 horror novels in 5 subgenres that I want to read before I die. But then I got to thinking, I thought, well, what if after I've read the 10th book, I drop dead? And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. That's not the way I had it planned. That's not what I wanted to do. So yeah, I got a little nervous with that title. So I said, let's scratch that one. So I came up with this one here, a little safe one, 10 horror novels in 5 subgenres that I want to buy and read. So the 5 subgenres, what I did, I'll tell you first of all what I did. I'm going off on a tangent here, but I went online and I started looking through all these top 10, top 20, top 50 lists of horror novels. And I broke it down into subgenres. Like, I thought, well, let me see what some of the best vampire books are. So I looked up top vampire books. And I said, well, what about werewolf? Same thing with werewolf. Like, what about, let me think, haunted house. And I found books on haunted house books and stuff like that, novels. So what I did was I took 5 subgenres of horror, and they are vampire, werewolf, ghost, haunted house, and folk. And I picked 2 books from each subgenre. So 2 vampire, 2 werewolf, so on and so forth. So I've got the synopsis for the books right here. And so let's go ahead and get underway. So for vampire, the first book I chose for vampire is Afterage by Yvonne Navarro. A plague of vampirism has crept across the country, reducing once thriving cities to ghost towns. In Chicago, a few scattered survivors hide behind the fortified walls of office buildings and museums, raiding deserted stores for dwindling supplies of clothing and food. Meanwhile, a hungry vampire population also struggles for survival as their prey grows scarce, forcing them to capture alive the last remaining humans as breeding stock for the blood farms that will ensure their future. Now a small band of humans makes a desperate last stand against their vampire masters, fighting back with the only weapon that can kill the dead. And that is for Afterage, and that is the first of the vampire novels. All right, excuse me here. Number 2, the second vampire novel I want to read or want to buy and read is The Light at the End, and this is by John Skip and Craig Spector. An adrenaline-charged tale of unrelenting suspense that sparks with raw and savage energy. The newspapers scream out headlines that spark terror across the city. 10 murders on the New York City subway. 10 grisly crimes that defy all reason. No pattern, no MO, no leads for police to pursue. The press dubs the fiend the subway psycho. The NYPD desperately seeks their quarry before the city erupts in mass hysteria. But they won't find what they're looking for, because they all think that the killer is human. Only a few know the true story, a story the papers will never print. It is a tale of abject terror and death written in grit and steel and blood. The tale of a man who vanished into the bowels of the urban earth one night, taken by a creature of unholy evil, then left as a babe abandoned on the doorstep of hell. Now he is back, driven by twin demons of rage and retribution. He is unstoppable, and we are all his prey, unless a ragtag band of misfit souls will dare to descend into a world of man-made darkness, where the real and unreal alike dwell in endless shadow, a place where humanity has been left behind, and the horrifying truth will dawn as a madman's chilling vendetta comes to light. All right, and that is The Light at the End, and those are the 2 books that I chose for the horror or the vampire subgenre. All right. Next up, we got werewolves. Let me scroll the page a little bit here. Find my mouse. There we go. All right, where you at here? All right, there we go. Whoops, too far. All right, there we go. All right, first up for werewolf, we have got Mongrels by Stephen Graham Jones. This will actually be the first book I read if I get a hold of it and read it, by Stephen Graham Jones. A spellbinding and darkly humorous coming-of-age story about an unusual boy whose family lives on the fringe of society and struggles to survive in a hostile world that shuns and fears them. He was born an outsider, like the rest of his family. Poor, yet resilient, he lives in the shadows with his Aunt Libby and Uncle Darren, folk who stubbornly make their way in a society that does not understand or want them. They are mongrels, mixed blood, neither this nor that. The boy at the center of Mongrels must decide if he belongs on the road with his aunt and uncle, or if he fits with the people on the other side of the tracks. For 10 years, he and his family have lived a life of late-night exits and narrow escapes, always on the move across the South to stay one step ahead of the law. But the time is drawing near when Darren and Libby will finally know if their nephew is like them or not, and the close calls they've been running from for so long are catching up fast now. Everything is about to change. That is Mongrels by Stephen Graham Jones. Next one, werewolf, is Moon Death, the debut novel from Rick Hotela. I should say the late Rick Hotela. I've read a couple of Rick's books. I don't think I read this. I read Moon Bog. I don't know if they're sequels or they fit together or not. Anyway, Moon Death is the debut novel of Rick Hotela. The story centers around a middle-aged school teacher called Bob Wentworth, who moves to the quiet little town of Cooper Falls to make a new start for himself after a bitter divorce. But the small town is far from peaceful. One of its residents is a witch and another is a werewolf, and shortly after his arrival, a series of brutal killings begin. All right, so those are the two books, Mongrels and Moon Death, that I chose for the werewolf subgenre that I would like to buy and read. Okay, all right, what do we got next? We have got Ghost. Novels in the ghost. And I guess you could say ghost and haunted house go together sometimes, but I don't think they do all the time. You know, because a house can be haunted by something other than a ghost. And a ghost doesn't necessarily have to haunt a house. A ghost can haunt a person also. So there you go. All right, for the first one for Ghost, I chose The Little Stranger. It's by Sarah Waters. One post-war summer in his home of rural Warwickshire, Dr. Faraday, the son of a maid who has built a life of quiet respectability as a country physician, is called to a patient at lonely Hundreds Hall. Home to the Ayres family for over 2 centuries, the Georgian house, once impressive and handsome, is now in decline, its masonry crumbling, its gardens choked with weeds, the clock in its stable yard permanently fixed at 20 to 9. Its owners, mother, son, and daughter, are struggling to keep pace with the changing society, as well as with conflicts of their own. But are the Ayreses haunted by something more sinister than a dying way of life? Little does Dr. Faraday know how closely and how terrifyingly their story is about to become intimately entwined with his. And that is The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. Excuse me one moment. All right. Okay, next up, the second book in the ghost subgenre that I would like to read. And this will definitely be my first time reading this author. And this is The Good House by Tananarive Due. Working to rebuild her law practice after her son commits suicide, Angela Toussaint journeys to the family home where the suicide took place, hoping for answers, and discovers an invisible evil force that is driving locals to acts of violence. That is the synopsis for The Good House. All right, moving on, we've got Haunted House. Okay, here we go. This is one that I have started, I quit, I keep reading about it, and it keeps intriguing my curiosity, sparking my curiosity. So I'm going to pick this book up. May take me forever to read it, but I'm going to do my best to do so. And the book I am talking about is none other than House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. All right. Years ago, when House of Leaves was first being passed around, it was nothing more than a badly bundled heap of paper, parts of which would occasionally surface on the internet. No one could have anticipated the small but devoted following this terrifying story would soon command. Starting with an odd assortment of marginalized youth, musicians, tattoo artists, programmers, strippers, environmentalists, and adrenaline junkies, the book eventually made its way into the hands of older generations who not only found themselves in those strangely arranged pages, but also discovered a way back into the lives of their estranged children. Now, for the first time, this astonishing novel is made available in book form, complete with the original colored words, vertical footnotes, and newly added second and third appendices. The story remains unchanged, focusing on a young family that moves into a small home on Ash Tree Lane, where they discover something is terribly wrong. Their house is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Of course, neither Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist Will Navidson nor his companion Karen Green was prepared to face the consequences of that impossibility until the day their two little children wandered off and their voices eerily began to return another story of creature darkness, of an ever-growing abyss behind a closet door, and of that unholy growl which soon enough would tear through their walls and consume all their dreams. And that is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. Okay, next up in the haunted house subgenre, I have picked The Family Plot by Cherie Priest. Music City Salvage is owned and operated by Chuck Dutton, master stripper of doomed historic properties and expert seller of all things old and crusty. Business is lean and times are tight, so he's thrilled when the aged and esteemed Augusta Withrow appears in his office. She has a massive family estate to unload, lock, stock, and barrel. For a check and a handshake, it's all his. It's a big check. It's a firm handshake. And it's enough of a gold mine that he assumes his daughter Dahlia to personally oversee the project. Assigns his daughter Dahlia. Sorry about that. Dahlia and a small crew caravan down to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where the ancient Withrow house is waiting. And so is a barn, a carriage house, and a small overgrown cemetery that Augusta Withrow left out of the paperwork. Augusta Withrow left out a lot of things. The property is in unusually great shape for a condemned building. It's empty, but Dahlia and the crew quickly learn it is far from abandoned. There's something in the Withrow mansion, something angry and lost, and this is its last chance to raise hell before the house is gone forever. All right, so that is The Family Plot by Cherie Priest. This will be my second book, if I read this, by Cherie Priest. The first was Dreadful Skin, which is a werewolf novel that she wrote. All right. Finally, moving on. Last category, or last subgenre, folk. So the books I chose for that are, first of all, a definite classic in the genre, and that is Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon. After watching his asthmatic daughter suffer in the foul city air, Theodore Constantine decides to get back to the land. When he and his wife search New England for the perfect 19th century home, they find no township more charming, no countryside more idyllic than the farming village of Cornwall Coombe. Here they begin a new life, simple, pure, close to nature, and ultimately more terrifying than Manhattan's darkest alley. When the Constantines win the friendship of the town matriarch, the mysterious Widow Fortune, they are invited to join the ancient festival of Harvest Home, a ceremony whose quaintness disguises dark intentions. In this bucolic hamlet, where bootleggers work by moonlight and all of the villagers seem to share the same last name, the past is more present than outsiders can fathom, and something far more sinister than the annual harvest is about to rise out of the earth. Credited as the inspiration for Stephen King's Children of the Corn, Thomas Tryon's chilling novel was ahead of its time when first published and continues to provoke abject terror in readers. and that is Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon. All right, last but not least, we've got Pine by Francine Toon. Lauren and her father Niall live alone in the Highlands, in a small village surrounded by pine forest. When a woman stumbles out onto the road one Halloween night, Niall drives her back to their house in his pickup. In the morning, she's gone. In a community where daughters rebel, men quietly rage, and drinking is a means of forgetting, mysteries like these are not out of the ordinary. The trapper found hanging with the dead animals for 2 weeks. Locked doors and stone circles. The disappearance of Lauren's mother a decade ago. Lauren looks for answers in her tarot cards, hoping that she might one day be able to read her father's turbulent mind. Neighbors know more than they let on, but when local teenager Anne Marie goes missing, it's no longer clear who she can trust. And that is Pine by Francine Toon. And that's going to do it. That is 10 novels, horror novels, and 5 subgenres that I would like to buy and read. And thank you guys for watching. This is going to post tomorrow afternoon at 2:30 in the afternoon. So until then, whatever you do, be safe. All right? Thank you. Bye-bye.